and there is absolutely no denying that carp love bloodworm, and none more so in the winter. But I've been using them in my angling now all throughout the year over the last couple of years, and I really have noticed a massive difference in my catch rate. And in this short video, I'm going to show you how to get the best out of a bag of bloodworm and how to use it to put more fish on the bank, just like this one here. Now, when it comes to natural bait, there is absolutely no denying that any carp that's swimming, no matter how big or small, how young or old they are, or what lake they swim in, every single carp loves natural bait. And by adding some form of natural bait into your spod mix, I guarantee you will get you those bonus bites when all else is struggling. I'm here today at Linear Fisheries, which is a fishery that I spend a lot of my angling life at. And the reason for that is because it offers absolutely fantastic fishing and open access to some very big carp as well. Now, one of the rules here is that you can't spod maggots out, which, as everybody knows, is probably one of the most commonly used natural baits. Yes, you can spod worms out, but what other natural bait is there to use to give your mix the edge? And that is bloodworm. Now, I've been using it for a couple of years. It sort of took me quite a while to get onto it, more so because I was a little unsure of exactly how to fish it properly and how to get it to the bottom. But prior to sort of bringing it up here and having a good go of it up here, I'd done a lot of experiments on it and found the best way that I could get it to the bottom of the lake and make sure that it's fishing exactly where I want it to be. How's about that then? One of Manor Farm's real old original carp, the pinhead mirror, a little over 37 pound. And this just goes to show that even though these carp have been around for donkey's years and they've seen everything, by adding some natural bloodworm into your mix, these big old carp, they just cannot resist it. It comes in 1 kilo frozen bags, and you can bring as much or as little as you want to the session. So if I'm only going for a night and I know that I'm not going to be doing a lot of spodding, I'll simply take a little handsaw to the block of frozen bloodworm, cut myself off a little section, pop it in a sandwich bag, and I'll bring it out with me. So you're not wasting any, because it's not cheap stuff, but like I say, adding natural bait to any mix just gives it that little bit of extra oomph. This particular session, I'm here on Manor Farm, and again this week, similar to last week, I've had one of the lake's sort of old original A-team fish, if you like, and that sort of leads me on to sort of talking about the last couple of years that I've been adding the bloodworm into the mix. Now, this complex, much like a lot of the places that I fish, are very busy, and you know, bloodworm is available for everybody to use, but again, a little bit like myself, I think a lot of people have always been very dubious about maybe how to use it. Like I say, since I've sort of worked out a way of getting it to the bottom and fishing it effectively and know sort of what weather to fish it, you know, if it's mega windy, big crosswinds, undertow, it isn't really going to be much of a benefit putting it in your mix, because it simply isn't going to get where you want it to fish. But as I was saying, the last couple of years, adding it into the mix is, you know, I'd say it's sort of revolutionised, not my angling, but sort of the stamp of fish that I've been catching. You know, a lot of these big fish that are swimming around on this complex are very old fish, and as I've already said, they've seen everything over the course of them years. They swim around these lakes. There's upwards of 30 guys every night fishing on here, and they have literally seen every single thing imaginable. But by adding something natural to a mix, even the oldest, most wariest carp, you know, will trip up on it. And much like when I went to Berners Hall, you know, I'd never fished it before, didn't really have too much sort of information about it, other than the fact that I knew that the confidence that I had with the bloodworm, that if I took it with me, by adding it to the mix, that was going to give me the best chance of getting bites, you know. And it was quite a tricky time of the year that we went there. It was late November, it was freezing cold. Again, that was a little bit windy, but it wasn't too windy where I couldn't use it, and there were sort of quieter periods where I could get it down onto the bottom. And again, on that session there, you know, I had three of the biggest commons in the lake. And like I say, I think by adding it to my mix, so no, actually I don't even think, I know by adding it to the mix, when I'm sat behind them rods, I'm just so much more confident in knowing that something in my bucket is natural, even though you don't have to add a lot to a spod mix. Now, I'm not talking making up a bucket and adding 2 kilos of bloodworm in, because I think with a natural, as good as they are, you can overdo them. But just by adding, you know, a handful or a corner of a bag, whatever you decide to cut off, that's just enough to add that sort of natural edge to your bait. So as I said, prior to starting to really introduce the bloodworm into my mix, I'd done a hell of a lot of testing, whether that was at home or it was up here at Linear. I wanted to make sure that when I was going fishing, that I was using it to its maximum sort of potential, if you like. First things first, it is a natural bait. It comes frozen. The biggest element of a natural bait is keeping it as fresh as possible. So I'll always keep it in a cool bag, and prior to using it I will break off however much. I think we've got a little bite on the left hander there. Well, got interrupted there, so we'll do this next little bit whilst I'm playing another Manor Carp. Another thing, and this is a this is again a very, very important thing that I found, is as with any natural bait, is using it as fresh as you possibly can. Now, when you're turning up and you're making up your bucket of spod mix, the last thing you want to be doing is adding all your bloodworm to it, leaving that bucket at the front of your swim, only to find that when you go to spawn in a couple of hours time, the heat sort of penetrated through the bucket, and yeah, the natural bait, the bloodworm, turns and it ends up having a massively opposite effect. And yeah, gone off natural bait, as you will probably know for those of you that use it a lot, it absolutely stinks, and yeah, it can be a repellent rather than an attractor. So always using it fresh, adding it into your mix as you go, making your mix fresh as you put it out. And then more importantly as well, is at the end of each sort of spodding session, or top up if you like, clean the bucket out. Don't leave any residue of any of it in your bucket. The last thing you want to be doing is letting that stick to the side of the bucket, fermenting and going off. So when it comes to actually putting it out, this was something that sort of was frying my head for quite a while, because when you just chuck a little bit in the margin and you watch it sinks very, very slowly. And these lakes up here, a lot, like a lot of other lakes, always have a wind on them, always have some form of tow, and getting it to the bottom over the spot that you're fishing can sometimes be very, very sort of tricky or difficult. Now, the way that I've managed to find it best is a lot of the boilies that I add into my mix will always be washed out, and prior to putting them into my bucket, I'll mulch them up so it sort of makes like a real heavy sort of pulp type ground bait mix. And to that, I'll literally just add the bloodworm, mix it in. You can't see it because it's so small, it sort of disappears into the mulched up boilie, but I know that when that spawn's hitting the water, the mulched up boilie is sort of formulating quite a tight ball, sinking it down to the bottom. Yes, you're going to lose a few on the way down, but 90% of that bloodworm will hit the deck and disperse across the bottom. And when it actually hits the bottom, like I say, you can't physically see the bloodworm, and you certainly never be able to count how many bloodworm you've got per kilo, but when you look at it on the bottom, the spread that it creates is absolutely incredible. And when them fish come in, they're not looking to eat it to get full up, but because of the natural attraction in it, you really don't need to put a great deal out. All you need to do is to make sure you put it out fresh, and more importantly, make sure it's going exactly where your rods are. Now about that to finish off this little bloodworm piece. And if that's not living proof that adding bloodworm to your mix doesn't make a difference, I don't know what is. Another Manor 30 pounder.